Hello, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today here at the Phil Rice YouTube channel. I've got a really cool show for us today with a very cool person, a good friend of mine, a brother on the path. And yeah, I just want to do a little bit of quick housekeeping. And it's funny because the person or the sponsor that I usually thank is actually the person we're bringing on. So I'm just going to do a quick shout out just because I want to say a big thank you to Violet Flame Studios, who have been a wonderful supporter for the YouTube channel by sponsoring the live streaming software. And so please, as we move through this presentation, you will get to know more about the studio and the people behind it and the vision. And so I just like to put that in at the beginning for this month. So thank you for watching that. And welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And please remember that in the description below of the YouTube video, you can find out how to support the guests, how to find the guests, how to support the guests and the channel. And please do, because you'll find that there's lots of goodies. If you're really interested in whatever content we're putting out here, there will always be links for you to follow and explore. And yeah, thank you. And so without further ado, I'm going to bring on today's guest. I'm going to bring on Mr. John McCormick from Violet Flame Studios. Welcome, brother. Thank you for joining us here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time and the effort that you've gone to extrapolate information from me. Please proceed, and I'll share to the best of my ability.
Well, I've got to say, bro, you know, it's been a long time coming, and here we are. And you know, yeah, we hang out a bit, and I get to see some of the stuff that happens in the background as far as the game development process goes. You know what goes into it, because it's more than just sitting behind a computer. The research, the keeping on top of things, you know, maintaining a good quality of life as well. You know, you're a hardcore, you know, exercise dude. You love keeping fit and well. You know, you lead the kind of life that a lot of people would probably find quite surprising in many ways as well. And so what we want to do is we want to give some airtime to you, to the vision, to the studio, to the current project, the oncoming projects, and really just do an expose essentially on this quite unique being and entity that's being formed here, and the various forms. And so I just another quick shout out to the chat. Guys, if you're in the chat and you've got any questions for Violet Flame, for John, we'll get to some questions towards the end of the hour, but please stick around because we've got some goodies for you that haven't been shown yet. And we've just been doing some background testing, and things are looking pretty. So please stick around. Now, thanks for watching. Got a question? Put it in the live chat. John, please tell us about your background in gaming and the gaming industry. Obviously, you know, like me, we started off playing games as kids, most likely, and there's some milestone games out there. You know, I remember playing things like Dungeon Master on an Amiga, and Alex the Kid on my Sega Mega System, and then getting into things like Eye of the Beholder, the D&D games, and the Wolfensteins. And I've watched the development from pretty much almost scratch, you know, getting into 3D games and that. But I'd love to hear a little bit about your story with gaming, and you know, and obviously you've worked in the gaming industry.
Yeah, so games, I would say, are the biggest gateway drug. Like, I was an addict by the time I was 5 or 6 years old. Because I saw beneficial input, like, to what I was doing, you know. Initially, obviously, what catches you is just the unsurpassable levels of stimulation that are achieved from playing games, and the fact that you get control over your actions, and you get actually to be the protagonist and to determine the outcome of certain events that you wouldn't get to encounter in reality, unless you were pretty out there, is something that really I noticed really early on. I went through the conventional process that everybody else did. Started with the console. Super Mario Brothers was kind of the first major game franchise that I got into, and loved it. And my brother and my dad were also big gamers. My dad was actually the one that got us into games and got us our first console. And I remember really, really early on always being satisfied by challenge. So I would always play the games on the hardest difficulty level possible, and noticed pretty quickly that by doing that, my skill in the game quickly exceeded the likes of my brother and my dad, who would never play on hard because they would just get too frustrated. But I'd be patient back then and persist. And because I did so, it wasn't long before I was above and beyond the abilities that they had. And I just ended up extrapolating that out into pretty much everything that I did. Once I left school pretty early, and started getting into practices that I found were challenging. I joined the military by the time I was 24. Following that, I got into sports and leisure with Auckland Council, and fitness predominantly. That wasn't challenging enough, so I moved into private investigation and then debt collection. Had a few kind of spiritual hiccups along the way throughout those processes, and then sought to do something that was equally challenging but less, I guess, tainting on the soul. So I moved into real estate, which a lot of people would probably say that's not really much better. But I did that for 4 years. Again, like playing on hard, I was not just selling conventional properties. I focused on leasehold properties that were leaking. So like the hard of the hard. But I had the best mentor that I possibly could have had, Andrew Murray from Apartment Specialist, who was a man on a mission in his own right. To, I guess, liberate the real estate industry from all the deceptive tropes that happen between real estate agent and vendor. So I know I've gone off topic. We're obviously not talking about games, but there's a reason why I've gone down this path. Games were obviously the little background recreational / exploration hobby that I kept ever since I was a kid. And it wasn't until I was about 33, making very good money selling apartments, that I had this kind of midlife crisis or awakening vision, you could say, that called me to a higher purpose. It basically called me out of sales and called me into the creative sphere to do what I now know was my purpose, or is my purpose. So I basically did a hard pivot away from conventional vocations that earn good money here in New Zealand, and hard pivoted into game development, which in New Zealand at the time for an entry-level person was paying nothing. So I sacrificed a very, very stable income for pursuit of a dream, which paid nothing for quite some time. About 2 years I just studied hard, or a year and a half I studied hard, and after that I applied for a job at Rocketworks, which was one of the larger operators in New Zealand. I spent about 8 months there with Rocketworks, which was kind of my initiation into the industry, and probably for someone like me who's kind of right-wing conservative, quite hard-headed, the worst place I could have started. When someone like me enters the game development industry, you are not exactly archetypically, you're not exactly the standard archetype for a game developer. And so I stood out like a sore thumb, and quite quickly ended up getting managed out just because of my divergent views. Again, I'm very conservative, right wing, a very spiritual guy, and very hard headed. A warrior shaman I like to identify as, and there was just no room for that type of archetype. And many others, to be fair, found the same experience as me. And after that, this was about 2 years, 3 months into my game development journey, after giving up, the jobs that were paying and keeping the family happy, I kind of had a meltdown. I realized, holy God, have I really entered this industry? Am I really going full send and giving everything up to be amongst people who are like my polar opposite, who reject me in every way because of the way I am? I had a breakdown essentially, because in my head at that point, I was doing what I was instructed to by my awakening vision. I was like, right, go for it. This is what it is. I have to commit to it. Don't worry about the money. Just keep on trucking, and eventually we'll arrive. And yeah, so I was in a pretty crappy state at that time, basically second guessing everything I did, and I just put an asked for the first time in a very long time for help. Asked something beyond me, put a call out to God. And at the time I was a practicing Buddhist, and practicing Krishna consciousness. So kind of had a bit of Hindu philosophy pretty deeply ingrained in me. So when I was putting that shout out, I was thinking about Buddha and Krishna at the time, thinking, help me, one of you, throw me a bone. I've done everything you said. I gave up my job. Like I sacrificed it a lot to follow this path, and now I need something. I need direction. And as soon as I kind of put that call out, it was like a little voice in my head was like, just stay with Blender and Unreal and proceed with the vision, and everything will be fine. Have faith. And so I was just like, okay, I'll just keep going with Blender and Unreal. So just kept practicing, updated my portfolio and all the rest of it over the next 2 weeks. And then I get an email from a company by the name of Spellbound Studios in India. And I'm thinking, that's interesting. Spellbound Studios. I mean, I take everything as having meaning. For me, there are no coincidences. Coincidences it's just pattern not recognized, essentially. So I was like, okay, this is a mean lead. I've got to follow this. And they had some work for me, which paid me extremely well, paid me more than I earned when I was working for apartment specialists, and doing less hours and doing the work that I loved, creating artwork. And so I did one job, got a really good result. And they said, hey, we love the work that you did, and we want to invite you to do something much larger and much more significant. And so they were working on a recreation for Disney, for Star Disney India. And they were essentially requiring me to recreate a large sacred site in Odisha, which is, I want to say, southeastern India. One of the foremost sacred sites in India, called the Jagannath Temple. And it's so sacred that it's forbidden to take photos of, although people still do. They're kind of quick snaps straight out of the camera. So not very high quality reference material was available, which required me to go and do quite a bit of research into the temple. And in doing so, I had my mind absolutely shattered. And for me, it was the most profound personal divine revelation I've ever had in my life, because upon researching the requirements for building this sacred site, I discovered that a deity that I did not know existed yet, was that temple was built for that deity, and that deity just so happened to be the god who emanated both Krishna and Buddha. So it blew my mind. And that's this chap sitting back here, Vishnu, right? The maintainer. And I was at a point where that's exactly what I needed. I needed maintenance. I was down on my luck. I was down on income. And I needed something to prop me back up. And lo and behold, Vishnu, the mighty master maintainer, delivered upon my request. Please help me, please help me. And with 2 weeks, I was building a temple for him and being paid, I think, $10,000 US a month to do so. So it was unbelievable. And for me, that was the most profound revelation I've ever had. And all as that did was just keep me fixed on this path, knowing that, right, this is what I'm supposed to do. I have a story to tell. I have a wealth of life experience to put into this story. And this is what I must do. So I just kept cracking on. And then after working for Spellbound Studios, that temple that I built for Vishnu, the Juggernaut temple for that project, ended up landing me the next job with Wilderworld, which was some very, very successful product developers and very financially endowed operators from Silicon Valley who pulled me into their cryptocurrency project as their lead artist for about a year and a bit. I worked for them for about a year and a bit. And they paid me phenomenally. And I was able to save up what I could to start the studio. So again, like for me, it was the most profound revelation that I've ever had occur in my life. And there's been plenty, but this one was absolutely undeniable because it was like watching from that one request that I made for assistance, you know, humbling myself and pleading for help. It was just, it went one to another, to another, to another. And now I'm here, you know, so it was absolutely mind blowing. And I always knew it had to be games. You know, I always knew that games was going to be the thing that I'd use, the vehicle that I'd use to tell my story and deliver my message and channel my vision. But it was all about waiting for the right time. You know, I had to obviously mature as a person. I had to go through all these experiences. I had to get dragged through the dirt before I could have the unwavering faith in what I have and what I'm doing now. So yeah, I mean, I was both so in terms of like working in the gaming industry, you know, like I worked for two really large operators that juggled an enormous amount of money. And the first one, when I worked for Rocketworks, I was pretty much inspired that I could start my own studio from there. You know, I was just like, okay, I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't want to speak badly, but I got to be honest. Like I just thought I was it appeared to me like I was just in an operation that was more interested in just throwing superfluous amounts of money at the wall for nothing. And it seemed nuts to me. I thought, man, if this guy can have the success that he has had throwing around the amounts of money that he does, I know I can have a success with a fraction of the amount of revenue, you know, like, so I was basically inspired after working for these giant operators. The first one basically showing me exactly how I wouldn't operate. And then the second one showing me exactly how I should operate, being Wilderworld. So big ups to that company. Shout out to Wilderworld. But yeah, after that, I knew that this was what I had to do.
Wonderful. Yeah. And, you know, I think that a lot of people can relate, especially in their sort of like, you know, first 30 or 40 years of like reflecting back on situations like, you know, I've worked inside existing structures that somebody else has built, and that offers padding for exploration and discovering, you know, how, you know, you can start to discover, you know, where it's great and where it's quite restricting, you know, and, you know, we've got some friends who are, you know, on the fence a little bit. They're at a fork in the road going, you know, I've been doing this thing for a while. I can do so much more if I can take the chains off, essentially, because, you know, we discover these things and we go, man, I can take this further, but you are somewhat blocked by the policy of the institution you're working for. So, you know, you go in, you explore and go, wow, they're great over here, not so much here. But you're right. I mean, I'm grateful, however I felt about places I've worked for, because they gave me an opportunity, a bit of padding. They allowed me, they were paying me essentially to explore the industry. And then, like a lot of people who become entrepreneurs, they go, you know, well, I'm out of here. I think I can do this better. And that's the thing, right?
I could have easily walked away from Rocketworks with a really negative attitude, you know, and could have easily sabotaged my career in gaming from there, just because it was such a negative experience. 8 senior staff resigned in the 8 months that I was there, you know, and the majority of them were from overseas. You know, there was tons of talent in there in that office. So that's to Dean's credit. He was really good at pulling people over. I mean, it shouldn't be difficult if you spend $50 million on an office, or whatever the sum was, something phenomenal. Probably not that much, probably more like 5, but whatever. But you know, like you always have 2 choices in every scenario. You can either be the victim or you can be the hero, you know, and you just have to focus on, like, what did I gain from it? And I gained heaps. I was there for 8 months. You know, I got to see aspects of management that I will avoid like the plague. You know, I got to see skilled resource that I will run after when I'm financially able to. You know, like I made a lot of network, a lot of good friends. But again, yeah, it's all about taking away the positives, you know, and trying to just purge the negatives and just make sure you learn from them and move forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. You know, so we can discover value in all that life experience, and we certainly get a good understanding of what we want and what we don't want. And it's very valuable.
Providing we're honest with ourselves anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, we soon find out over time, you know, like if we are being honest, because it lets us know, doesn't it? You know, we soon discover.
Rising again and again until you go, oh, I see what you're trying to tell me. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Well, you know, this brings us on to essentially let's talk about the studio, you know, which was born, you know, like you said, you finished at Wild World and you had a bit of coin and you're like going, all right, I'm ready to do my thing now. Now, we'll talk about the inspiration for the game after this one, because that'll lead us into some other questions. But tell us about the studio. You know, there's a vision, there's a team, and I'll bring the website up so we can use that as a sort of a visual.
Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to make a studio pretty much when I started with game development. I didn't really know how quickly or how much orientation I was going to require. But it was something that I had my head in for so long that I knew it was only a matter of time. You know, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I probably take a little bit longer to prepare myself for readiness than other people do. But once I did, it was like, okay, cool. What's going to be like the maximum? How can I maximize my value offering to people, as to gamers and to the community? And obviously that first starts with evaluating problems, right, in the space. And one of the things that I started to notice was becoming more and more of a thing was woke ideologies being baked into very, very large titles, right? And so games, because of their nature, the replayability, the repetitiveness, etc., and the states of immersion that it brings about, the states of trance that it brings about, it's incredibly potent in terms of transmitting a message to people. And so when I saw all these studios start to push all these far left messages, I thought, okay, I obviously need to participate in this game. And I think I need to offer the antidote, which would be a little bit of a balance, right? I'm obviously quite a conservative guy in terms of I'm willing to struggle, I'm willing to suffer, I'm willing to do the work. I have conventional values. And I thought, what better way to start seed or reseeding something like akin to Stoic philosophy than with a competitive or repetitive multiplayer game where you're constantly being exposed to these particular mechanics or these languages or symbols that will impress these philosophies or ideologies upon you in some way. Okay, so it's almost like an initiation into Stoic philosophy to reinvigorate the spirit of the masculine in young gamers who are being, in my opinion, led astray by moral relativism and other ideologies like wokeism that emerge from it. So that was the vision of the studio, was essentially to re-empower and revivify the masculine spirit by exposing players to both Stoic philosophy and to Hermeticism, which I believe is an impactful and an incredibly potent tool for self-transformation.
Yeah, wonderful. And yeah, I think you know, we're all feeling the results of sort of, you know, I personally, just for the record, I'm apolitical. I don't, but you know, as far as like what I'm viewing in the creative sort of arena, is that it is definitely skewed, and it's pulling away from, you know, it's too heartbreaking to watch Star Wars and Star Trek now. You know, these things I grow up with, because it's been overrun. They, you know, even in the old days, they were bringing on, you know, challenging social and cultural topics. But now it's like, you're kind of being force fed this stuff. And it's more like, well, you're kind of just using it as a platform for messaging rather than for storytelling. And it's not even very good storytelling. And it's quite, it's thing. So, you know, like as far as like what these graphics are amazing. I just want to show this sort of thing off. You know, obviously working in an environment where you've got conflicting values, like say you had in one of your previous employments, that can affect the quality of the creative experience and then the final outcome and product. And so, you know, if you're going to embark on a great work, there has to be, I mean, at the very least, agree to disagree. But, you know, in some cases, I think to get real creativity rocking, you've got to almost be, it's almost like a brotherhood in some ways, that, you know, everyone's on board and everyone's like, okay, we agree on these basic principles and values. Let's go from here. So I'd love to hear about, you know, like who is Violet Flame Studios? You know, who is the team, you know?
But before we get to that, I just want to preface a previous statement that I made when I said I'm right wing and conservative. That's purely out of necessity. Like, I'm a person that is hyper dynamic and hyper fluid. Like, I will change to suit the times if I need to, providing it still resonates with my core being, my core philosophy, right? But when I see the world or discourse, let's say, being pushed violently in one direction, my natural instinct is to pull it back towards the center. And so that is why I'm doing it, is because I see we've just gone a little bit far left. You know, like we should be in the center. Come on. It's fairly obvious that it's all about balance. Balance is the key. We've heard this from every philosophy, every mystical school since the dawn of time. Balance is the key. Buddha had the middle way, right? The avoidance of either extremes. And it just when you look at the root of all spiritual philosophies, it's the central pillar, the middle path, which is what we're all seeking to attain. And then when you look at the system, right, the political system, let's say, and you have a left and a right, or a blue and a red, it becomes very obvious that there is no concept of balance or center. They want you to pick a group and fight against the other one. So that's not, like, when I say right wing, it doesn't mean I'm anti-liberal. I'm definitely not. I'm probably more liberal than most conservative people. But it's like, I am taking this position and I'm using this position to do what I believe is to bring balance to the force, right? Back to your next question. Sorry to delay. Who is the team? Who is the team? The team is basically me and one other person predominantly, although we've had private contractors come in and help to kind of plug some holes and fill some spaces here and there. Obviously, credit needs to be given to you as well, as a metaphysical master magus who has been...
Thanks, man.
And I do mean that, brother, because your input has been paramount. to obviously helping me refine the vision and making sure that I do have a wise sage to bounce some of these philosophies that I'm injecting in off. So pretty much every piece of artwork, 99% of the artwork in the game has been developed completely by me. And we have one very, very talented programmer from Germany by the name of Salar KV, who is a man of few words, but a man of great action.
Oh,
and
yes.
pretty much everything that has been developed in this game has been developed in the last year and a little bit by me and him, by myself, by Salar and myself. We've also had a couple of private contractors early in the piece to do a little bit of concept art. We had a private contractor come in and make us a model of Thoth and a player character, which turned out to be a little bit too much of an investment, to be honest, for the quality of the product that ended up with. So the thing about game development now is there is a lot of skilled operators working out there that have no concept of what their value really is. So you can pick up some incredible assets for very, very cheap, which is, it's good when you're not financially endowed like I am, when you're kind of working on a skeleton budget, but it obviously undermines the value of the artist long term, which sucks, right? And that's kind of one of the things that I've noticed since operating in New Zealand is I basically can't afford to hire New Zealanders, which really speaks to, I guess, the economical situation we have here. I'd love to be able to pay New Zealanders to work on the project. And obviously, once we're on the other side of the Kickstarter, if it's successful and there is surplus in the kitty, then we'll be looking at hiring locally. But it kind of sings to the living situation here that, like, I literally have not found a single Kiwi that I could pay enough to motivate them to work for me. You know, whereas I've got a German working for me, I've had a Canadian working for me, I've had a guy from Singapore working for me, and that was all fine. You know, so there are challenges, obviously, that we're confronted with, being a small team and located where we're located, but there's ways around it, you know, like, and I'll use those mechanisms the best I can. And again, once the project is successful, I'm not going to be running away overseas to try and exponentially scale my success. I'm going to be bringing all the funds back home, and I'm going to try and re-nurture the soil here that nurtured me up until this point. So that's my vision, is to try and create a successful game development company whose roots are in New Zealand, whose primary interests are in New Zealand, so all of the benefits financially return to New Zealand.
And wonderful, you're right. You know, I went to a business networking event maybe last year or the year before, and it was based around business owners that came together over the lockdown period because everyone was suffering and struggling and getting no real useful support. As far as the long game went, and so they came together, but this was, like I said, only a couple of years ago. And there was a chap who came over and he was basically saying, look, you can hire a double degreed, very competent, enthusiastic, capable, reliable offshore worker in a country where the cost of living is insanely minimal. And that is what can help you get off the ground. If you try and hire someone local, you're essentially going nowhere because you won't be able to afford them. And, and it's too hard. So he was getting people in the Philippines for like $6 or $7 Australian at the time. And that's plenty for them. And like I said, double degreed, great workers and all that. And that enabled him after a time to build up the foundation he needed. Then he was able to start hiring locally. So it's almost like we're outsourcing to start so we can eventually insource. But I think that, this idea that we have to do these traditional models of looking in our immediate sphere of influence physically, it's not a realistic sort of way of operation if you want to set something up.
It's a great way to basically hamstring yourself, to be honest, unless you're loaded, right? And yeah, so with that said, before, what I'm saying is, once this game is the success that I know it's going to be, is that I'm not going to run away and like try and, you know, like reestablish myself somewhere else. I'm going to try and give back as much as I can to the community that raised me up before I leave. Right? Like I've been in New Zealand pretty much all my life. You know, I definitely need to leave at some point to go and explore the world and go and you know, broaden my network and all of that stuff. But it's not going to happen until I'm satisfied that I've managed to kind of raise up all the local people that are kind of in my circuit, and support all the people that supported me along the way as well. That's very paramount to me, is to try and liberate locals, and to share my methodology of how I managed to do this with only a couple of $100,000 of my own money, you know. And you don't even need that. You don't even need that much, you know. There's a recent example, a game called Chains Together, that we've looked at, was made by one guy, you know, like with basically free assets that he downloaded off the internet, all free, created with free software, Unreal, kit bashed it together in about a year and made $3 million in the first month, you know. So this man's life has changed forever. And, you know, people can do this. They just need to understand the educational tools are all available. All the software is free and open source. All you have to do is dedicate time, you know, like, and it's not one of these institutions that requires you to have done 10 years of service. All as it needs to see is that you've got chops. You know, if you can see some nice artwork, you can see that you understand how to optimize it, make it playable for players, you're sussed. So definitely something that I'd recommend young artists looking at, if they're kind of stuck at a crossroads and don't know where to go. Blender and Unreal are pretty potent tools. You can do pretty much everything, digital, media, visual media, audio media, all there, you know, so it's great.
So actually, just while we're on that topic, because it's great to hear you talk about that and encouraging upcoming generations to start looking seriously at this. Now, obviously, it's going to possibly be a while before the, you know, they're going to be making an AI game maker. And even then, we don't really know how good that's going to be, essentially. And so, you know, like, people are a bit nervous in various industries right now because of the effect of AI, artists especially. And so have you got any commentary about AI and about good paths to follow on? Like, as far as you're like, how could someone apply themselves in Unreal and Blender? That's probably a good safe bet right now.
Look, there's always going to be people that hate AI. There's always going to be people that worship, you know, like, there will be a market in the future of games that have no AI. People will want it, you know. I will say, don't hate it, don't love it, stick to your guns, focus on what you know you're good at, focus on what you know you're weak at, you know, or spend time on what you know you're weak at, so that kind of ends up being as good as what you're good at. Don't worry, a lot of it is hype. Obviously the future is very unpredictable. There's no point in worrying about things that you can't control. I would say utilize it. Try not to become dependent on it like a lot of people already are. It's going to change. The world's probably going to want us to become dependent on it. If you want to fall into that trap, you're welcome to. If you don't see it as a trap, if you see it as an opportunity, go hard. You know, it's beauty's in the eye of the beholder, brother. So, you know, again, it's about what you use the tool for. If you're using it to empower yourself, you know, like if you're actually gaining cognitive benefit through using it, then all the power to you. But if you become dependent on it, like anything else, you can guarantee it will come with a price.
Yeah, great. Well put. Thank you for that. And, you know, that's it. It is a tool. And I have to say, you know, the times that we've spent together and the values that we've both discovered and exploring the use of it, my gosh, it can save you a lot of time and do a lot of heavy lifting for you.
Yep, especially for kind of placeholder blocking and stuff. If you don't know where to start, or you're having trouble just kind of breaking the ice, then yeah, it's great. I use it more for just organizing data, and even then there can be issues because it deliberately screws you around, to prevent certain. Well, it's a fail safe, obviously. So you do still have to kind of double check it and be very diligent with the information it provides you. But it's wicked at organizing data. Like if you've got a big body, if you've got a big data dump that you need to extract some nectar from, the chat bots and the AIs are great for that. And it's cool for placeholder concept art, but obviously there's a big band of very angry concept artists that have gathered around that space because they've essentially been removed from work, or have had to dramatically change the way in which they work. But I mean, I just see that as the world changes constantly, and you have the choice. You can stay and practice your legacy ways if you want, or you can adapt and overcome and change and find a new profound use for something that people may use in a mundane way. Everything can be good and everything can be bad. Really, it's how you utilize it, and how you act upon it, and the outcome that it generates for you and everyone around you.
Now, I've got to say, after spending, we've been hanging out for just shy of a couple of years, and you've introduced me to your very methodical and meticulous market research protocols for setting up basically pitch decks and business plans to expose to potential angel investors and of this type, and you've been going through basically the motions of all the usual suspects and that, but as far as the the numbers go, I mean, you share some pretty awesome data, good to knows on your Facebook and that about, like you said, about what happened with Chain Together. Basically, he sold a $5 game and made a heck of money, and it obviously takes some work and effort, but he did it with free assets and all this type of thing. Now, how many people roughly do you think are playing games at the moment? Like, what's the market for gamers?
Well, last time I checked, it was more than 40% of the world. It was 3.32 billion consumers, unique consumers. And it's growing, obviously, year upon year. And there are lots of market gatekeepers that are saying, oh, it's slowing down. Oh, it's the hardest industry to get into. We know why they're saying that. They're protecting their market. It is hard to get into in terms of the skill level or the skill set required. It's not something that you can just jump into with no computer skills whatsoever. But if you've been using a computer for 10 years plus and you're very, very well orientated to, standard applications and layouts of things and kind of where things sit and what things do, a year and a half is all it's going to take you to come up to speed with, these softwares, and again, exponentially grow your value in terms of what you can generate. I have noticed it is quite tricky now to get contracts from overseas. I actually have a theory on why that is, but I will save that for another time. So you do really kind of need to have a good network if you are going to kind of embark upon this, because there are a lot of people that are all trying to do the same thing, right? They making games while you're sitting at home, listening to music, making art. I mean, when has an artist been able to make, like that Chain Together guy made $3 million in a month? When has an artist had the opportunity to make those kinds of figures by providing value to people? That's I've never heard of that. Usually art's just used to launder money, right? It's the opportunity is pretty profound, and people should definitely look into it if they've been flirting with the idea, because again, all the learning resources are free and open source and abundant. you just do really need to make sure that you square away your sales skills if you want to get a job in the industry like any other industry, because you are going to be competing against a lot of people, and communication is absolutely paramount in game development, because you've got so many kind of interconnected, interwoven working parts that if one part gets faulty or one part isn't working properly, the whole mechanism can break down. So it's very important that you have a high level of communication, and you make sure you square that away, a high level of confidence in your ability to articulate your skill set. Other than that, you just deep dive. All the free resources are there on the Unreal Learning Academy, on YouTube, on Udemy. I mean, I'll tell you this bit for free. When I first started learning the software, I looked at the most expensive or the most prestigious training institution in the world for digital art and 3D art for games specifically. And one of the universities was near where my father lives in Savannah, Georgia, and it was $70,000 per year for a game development course. I ended up spending 650 New Zealand dollars on Udemy, and essentially attained the exact same education because I just reverse engineered their curriculum and then found all of the educational materials either online free or for a few dollars on Udemy. So save yourself $70,000, especially if it's an industry that doesn't require some kind of formal accreditation. If you just need a certificate to say that you've done it, you're probably better off just getting out there and doing the work and having a mean portfolio. Again, I saved myself hundreds of thousands of dollars because I just used my brain.
Yeah, it's funny because, I'm a self-taught musician and I've just played with a lot of people, and I was really enthusiastic. And so I just naturally wanted to explore and see and find stuff out. I went and studied music for a year at a place, but it was a performance place. If anything, I just helped me fill in a lot of gaps. I got to talk to a lot of pro musos and learn stuff I didn't know. And the curriculum was fine, but it wasn't like a university type thing. But like you said, I think there's this thing, we're kind of hard baked to seek out kind of official kind of accreditation that, gets us stacked up with a student loan, and, and it can be quite disempowering. But without getting into that, I just want to say all of these images I'm bringing up, at least 99.999% of them have all been built by you majoritively or some members of your team. So if you see anything that's not yours, please sing out. But most of this is all you, isn't it?
I think everything that you see other than the main character in the game has been built by myself. Yeah. Over the last year. Yeah.
So everyone, just to show you that, John is a very driven, very hardworking, intelligent man when it comes to
He's a psycho.
And he's a fucking psycho. Yeah. But, you cannot deny, as I'm scrolling through these images, there is, I have seen how quickly he can whip this kind of thing up. He knows the tools and the toys. And I just want to ask quickly too, brother, as far as, without bringing in dollar figures, as far as like if somebody wanted to get started on this, say there's a young fella out there and he wants to hit mum and dad up for some things, what's the bottom end of equipment that someone would need to get started with, say, even just Blender? You reckon?
It really depends on what kind of content they plan on making. If they are looking at getting into animation and rendering and stuff like that, you probably want to fork out more to save time. I'd say no less than $5,000 on a rig for a productivity computer. That will pay for itself in the first 3 months of you being operational, or less the first month if you're really doing well. If you really want to optimize your time, then you need to spend about 10. So I'd say 5 to 10 grand. And
it's
again,
New Zealand.
This pays for itself very quickly because of the levels of productivity, the range of people that you can reach. Essentially where the majority of your spend goes is like video memory for rendering and stuff like that. But if you're not rendering, if you're just like kind of making medium poly, low poly assets for games, and not doing any baking or anything like that, which is a part of the process that requires pretty hefty GPU memory, then you can get away with, entry-level gaming rig, no problem. If it can play Call of Duty, you could probably open Blender. But again, it depends on what you're doing and how at scale you're working. Because the larger the scene, obviously, the more memory, the more components, the more memory, and video memory is not cheap. So yeah, I'd say anywhere between 5 and 10 grand.
Sweet as. And I just want to point out to people who are watching right now, thank you everyone for watching. If you've got any questions, please drop it into the live chat. We'll get to the questions in a bit. But I want to say that, go and explore the website because, oh my gosh, there's a lot of generosity on here. And you've probably maybe even getting your appetite whet a little bit by all these wonderful models and gameplay short demos that are on display. But also, John is very generous with doing tutorials on his YouTube channel for people wanting to learn things. And he's not shy about sharing the tools and the tricks of the trade, man. So, guys, there's plenty of good reason. If you're feeling even slightly enthusiastic about getting into the gaming industry to help, maybe you were on a mission to help improve the world. Maybe you've felt a calling, this is a great way to disseminate things. It's a popular medium. And it offers so many angles for people regardless of their creativity skill set. John,
it doesn't even need. It doesn't even need to be gaming. Like Unreal and Blender, you can use for ArcViz. You can use for anything.
ArcViz, what's that?
Yes, architectural visualization. Let's say you wanted to, you were into advertising or something. ArcViz is a way of basically pre-visualizing buildings. So there's obviously quite a lot of construction happening in New Zealand most of the time. So ArcViz is something that is quite good application for Blender and Unreal. You've also got cinematics. There's a big cinematic suite in Unreal and in Blender. Video, you can edit videos. So any kind of content creation, really. These are free tools, and free for commercial use as long as you're using games as Unreal. I think you do have to pay I think they do start making you pay a little bit of a user fee for professional use for ArcViz and cinematics, potentially, if it's not being used in the gaming industry. But Blender is completely free. And that is a powerful bit of kit, man. That is a powerful bit of kit. Without that, my studio operational costs would be like an extra 20 grand a year, 10 grand a year, because it's just for one user, because those conventional modeling suites aren't cheap.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's real. I appreciate you sharing this with people. Now, right, let's get into some goodies, man. So let's talk about the actual game. Let's talk about Ascension, the Immortal Alchemist, and what the inspiration was for the game.
Yeah, so the inspiration, I guess, is just spiritual revelations that I've had throughout my life that have kind of empowered and transformed me as a person, across multiple different philosophies and schools of thought, and vocations too, things that I've learned on the job, yada, yada, yada. And trying to, I guess, distill all of that life experience, all of that wisdom attained into a product that could communicate its message to a large audience. And again, I figured games was probably the best way to try and seed these traditional or ancient, in some cases, philosophies out to people, just to for consideration. Like we talk about diversity, it's a big buzzword, but what could be more diverse than every person accepting all the philosophical and religious ideologies of every other person without discriminating and without hating and without having to get into, and this for me is like the test of a true sage, or the test of a true guru is their willingness to accept the teaching of others, and the teaching of other gurus, whether they may conflict or not. So for me, it was about like kind of bringing together the golden thread that seems to extend through all of these sacred philosophies, and to reveal it to people so they can see that whether they want to call it plagiarized or whether they want to call it an archetypal re-emanation, these philosophies are all trying to communicate the same kind of message. Okay, there's obviously some slight differences and there's some nuances to that. But ultimately, at the root of it, we're all just searching for our place in the cosmos. We're all trying to find how we can capitalize on our position as humans. You know, that's it, and how we can transform ourselves into things that are far beyond what we are now, to go above and beyond the call of action and the call of duty and all of the rest of it. So games, I mean, that no gamer is not used to having mythology woven into the story. So games seems like the most ideal substrate for this kind of storytelling. Because it's going to seamlessly work with the content of the industry and the content of the medium. So yeah, and I figured what better way to empower people than to put some ancient philosophical principles that are tried, tested, and timeless into the kind of spinal column of the game mechanic. So every time you're learning a new game mechanic is an opportunity to have revealed to you some timeless, potent wisdom. I thought that was a cool idea. And I noticed that games have a profound impact on cognitive function when designed with that purpose. You know, we're starting to see that more and more learning processes are being gamified because it's easy to digest and it's easy to retain. And you can almost teach people without even realizing they're being taught, right? Which is the most potent form of message transmission, right? Is when they're not fully aware that they're actually being taught something. So yeah, I thought that would be a great idea. And games, basically coupling cognitive development training and initiation training with mystical lore, seemed like it would be twofold, both mentally empowering, emotionally empowering, and also inspiring, threefold even. Yeah.
So I just want to drop this. We said this on a conversation prior as well. This is that, you know, enjoyment and fun are essentially great lubricants for information receptivity. And, you know, I've got a friend who's a Waldorf, Rudolf Steiner homeschool teacher, and, you know, and it's highlighted in his materials as well, you know, like, well, actually, sorry, I'll rephrase that. When the child is having this sort of multisensory experience where there's it's relatable, it's engaging, and it's informative, and it uses a variety of sorts of like entry points and angles of access, it's much more effective. You know, if the kid's having fun and being creative. And I think that's too is that one thing I really like sometimes you want to play a game that's completely on rails, right? And then sometimes you just want to go, you know what, I want to switch my brain off. I just want to wander through corridors and bang, 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 fine, whatever. And then there's other games where it's like, you know, we might play a bit, but you know, like when you're in this room and then you're like looking around and it's like going, well, I can climb up there, I can climb up there, I can climb up there, I can climb up there. And it's like, which way do I go? And suddenly it's like, you know, I'm a kid in a candy store, all this exploration, what will unfold depending on the path that I take. And, you know, I think, like you said, you know, people enjoy playing games. And, you know, it's such a great idea, you know, and there are some examples, obviously, of esoteric implementation within games. But I think, too, that, you know, a lot of it will generally get sort of like smushed over a little bit or just rejigged a little bit, not to be so pointed. But, you know, after what we've sort of been, can Kiwis make the next Skyrim? Well, maybe I'll let you answer that one just quickly.
We'll see how successful Ascension is, and then I will I will see. I'll definitely come back to it. Skyrim is actually one of the inspiring components of the second episode of Ascension, which we're not talking about at the moment. We're kind of keeping hush hush, but quite possibly. It probably wouldn't be quite as large in scope. I'm not really one of the main things that I've kind of set out to do as a game developer is to reduce production bloat to the best degree that I can, to actually make it, make it so I'm spending a couple of $100,000 on developing a game as opposed to a couple of $100 million. I can't remember what the budget was for Skyrim, but I'm pretty sure it was in the circa tens of million.
Easily.
So maybe not in the next year, but certainly, hopefully soon. My ambitions certainly extend that far. So
that's great. Yeah, and I just want to say too, considering, I imagine like if because we had an amazing thing happen here a while back called the Lord of the Rings, and that was, man, I've got friends that were involved in that. I got one friend who was very involved. We both know him, and the buzz that was around during that time, and just what it did for just everyone and all that. Imagine if that could happen with something like a game, right? You could build something just as, and I mean, I know they tried to do it again with The Hobbit, but that's probably not worth mentioning. But, like as far as a game goes, I
actually liked The Hobbit. I actually preferred them to Lord of the Rings.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did. I did. I don't know why. I think they were just a little bit more more visually stimulating.
Okay.
And because I'm an artist, like this when you're confronted with that level of visual fidelity, you get a little bit lost with the story and just kind of, oh wow, I want to do, like I look at the art. I guess artists look at movies differently. But
well, as a guitarist, I listened to the guitar hooks. I wasn't really paying attention to anything else. But and I can obviously during The Hobbit, the access to the tech was some next level stuff too, right? So I totally hear that. But right, okay, now shall we? Now I've got a question here that may be easier to talk about with a little bit of interaction. Now, so I'll just put it out to the audience. We've got something a bit special lined up for you guys. John's got he's going to do a screen share of some gameplay, and so would you like to do that now, John, or would you like to cover some more conversation first?
I see a question on the screen. Do you want me to answer that question, or
this one here?
Oh no, there were game design features.
Oh yeah, so hang on. What are some game design features you can share that will help the game stand out? Obviously, there's a lot of big games coming out. Unreal 5 is like cracking open people's like perceptions of what's possible in a massive way. Like, I mean, Black Myth Wukong drops at the in about a week, and that looks beyond incredible, and almost like when I used to see like a 5-year-old Korean kid playing freaking high level classical guitar, I'm like, right, screw this, I'm out of here, But what do you think? Now, I'm going to say quickly that one of the things you introduced me to, which I thought was just really appealed to me, is that you know how to make the game run economically, so it'll be a smooth running game, even on a low spec machine or a lower spec. And we brought this up when we did a talk about Dragon's Dogma 2, which, although it's a fun game, man, it couldn't even run that well on a PlayStation 5, bro. Yeah. And that is nuts. So anyway, I'll let you run with this. Go for it.
Yeah, so in terms of the game design features, I guess the main point of difference where we're really trying to define ourselves is in the coupling of inspiration and empowerment coming from both mystical or theological philosophies and then cognitive exercise, right? And so the game is kind of like the first Ascension is kind of evolved into a speed running puzzle platformer, the puzzle components essentially are connected to the 7 Hermetic principles, there being multiple puzzle components for each principle. An example being correspondence, probably the easiest one to describe, is one of the goals that we set out was to identify means to empower players' ability to recognize patterns, right? Pattern recognition, so they can spot deception in their lives, right? As kind of a side effect of playing the game. So how we're doing that is to basically connect as many dots as we can in terms of correspondence symbolism, show all these kind of esoteric symbols and show them what they mean, show them how they're related to things that they would see every day. And train the mind to hold information under increasing levels of duress or stress. This is something that I've kind of pulled into the game from military training. One of the things that we used to do in the New Zealand infantry, and I won't go into details because I don't want to get into trouble, but I'll give you a brush over, is you'll go to what we'd call an observation stand, which you'd observe some kind of arithmetic, some kind of mental game. Basically, let's say it's a spot the difference stand. You go to a stand, you view say 20 objects, you've got to try and remember all 20 objects, then you'll run for 10 kilometers and then you'll come back to a stand that's identical, but you've got to spot the difference, right? And that seems like it would be quite simple, but I tell you, it is extremely difficult. As soon as you start fatiguing, as soon as your body and your mind starts to fatigue, holding that information becomes very, very difficult. And this is obviously like something that a lot of people should develop, the ability to kind of stay focused under pressure, or the ability to pay attention with a whole lot of background noise. This is what this training is for. So it essentially we load the player with symbols at the start and then run them through a gauntlet and then present them with a puzzle at the end of the gauntlet to see whether or not they've managed to retain what they held at the start. And of course, the first few attempts, they won't. This is something that has to be developed. It's a mental resource that you develop. So that's one of the ideas that are built into the law of correspondence, is the requirement to basically navigate through these environments, paying very close attention to every movement and every symbol, knowing that they're going to inform some aspect of the progression in the gameplay. It's also constantly forcing you to stop and assess your situation. If you think that you can get through this game by depending on your habits, you're very wrong. In fact, that's what it's going to try and break. It's going to try and set you up to make habits or to commit to habits and then destroy you for adhering to those habits. So it's basically a constant call to consciousness. You're under time pressure constantly. You're under external pressures in the environment. You've got an ascended alchemist trolling you every time you fuck up and encouraging you every time you do well, so I'm a massive fan of Dark Souls. I thought that franchise, in my opinion, is the king of games. And it's obviously not for a lot of people, but it sings to my soul type, because I love pain. I love to persist through the pain because I know what spoils and what fruit lie at the other end of the rainbow. If you're willing to struggle through, for every moment that you feel pain and feel discomfort is going to be a moment that you feel joy and pleasure and elevation and elation on the other side, right? So and there's obviously an aspect to the game, because we are sharing what most people would consider esoteric knowledge. There is a responsibility to make sure that that's only actually dished out to people that are willing and worthy to persist through the struggle to obtain the initiatory rights, right? You can't just give it all to them for free, right? So there's an element of progression to the initiation and the information that you'll obtain, the mystical insights and the revelations, etc., that come through your persistence through struggle, that come through a willingness to just keep pushing forward, to challenge yourself. you will die repeatedly again and again. But again, like it's supposed to frustrate you. It's supposed to challenge you. It's supposed to call you to keep going. You know, like I'm expecting people to rage quit in the first hour and refund the game. I'm expecting that, you know, because this is how we separate the gold from the base metal, right? Is we pressure it, we put it through the pressure, and whatever comes out on the other side may have some diamond-like qualities. I'm just going to use the toilet very quickly.
Yep, that's all right. I've got some stuff I can talk about while you disappear for a second. Hey, and I just want to say to everyone too, just while John was talking about Dark Souls, because that's a game that I discovered. I actually found the first game, Demon Souls, right? And for those of you that are aware of the Dark Souls series or the newest iteration that's largely related to it, which is Elden Ring, in the Dark Souls games, much like Elden Ring, when you're moving through the area and you come across what you'd call a boss battle or, you know, a challenging bad guy essentially, or an adversary, there's a musical component that engages to let you know, and it's very intense. It's very distracting, and you feel yourself, you feel the hairs on your back lift up, and you're in an adversarial situation. You're under pressure. It's very easy to die, essentially, or for your player character to be killed. And so, in some games, it's like run around and smash the button as hard as you can. In these games, you have to do this. Your movements, there's a lot of calculation. You have to learn the patterns. Now, that's popular in a lot of games. You watch the patterns. And as the AI improves in games, that can be a little bit more challenging. But essentially, you have to think on your feet. And you have these, environmental challenges which stack and make it increasingly more challenging for you to basically defeat this large boss with this music and these environmental things. But I have to say this, when you make progress in Dark Souls and you just stick at it and you just push through, there is no other feeling like it, man. The satisfying reward that you get, it's like going, you just get up and you're like another foot taller, man. Yeah. Like when my brother used to come around and play Dark Souls with us, every time we'd defeat a boss, it'd be like fist bump, and then like, okay, all right, it's time for a break. Even if we knocked it off in the first take, it was still like, all right, I feel like I've lifted myself up in worthiness somehow, because this game is not easy, and I put that in the hashtag. These challenging games. I was, I'm a bit of a gamer, but I see the value in it. I like being able to have interactive storytelling with a bit of skin in the game. And, it's just satisfying. And it made me a better gamer, because it's like, I got, if you're just playing mindless button mashes, there may be some nutrition in there, but there's nothing like, really like, okay, I have actually nailed out this attack pattern and how to move, and I know the timing. There's a lot more attention. You're able to focus on nuance and subtlety, and that is a developmental cognitive process.
One thing I noticed, I played quite a lot of League of Legends for a while, because that game, in terms of game mechanics, is absolutely fabulous. Socially, it's horrific. Politically, it's horrific. But the game itself is awesome. And what it requires you to do to essentially climb up the ladder is to become more and more mindful. Like, you have to hold more and more points of data concurrently to kind of to have an advantage. It's all about gaining all these micro advantages. And what I noticed was, when I was climbing in that game, right, because I was applying my cognitive faculties properly, I wasn't depending on habits, I was being mindful, I was carrying all these data points, everything in my life would go well, right? In my waking life, in my day-to-day life, everything's good. But as soon as I start failing in the game, and it's because of mental application. I'm now depending on habit. I'm not mindful. I'm not thinking about all the points that need to be tracked. Like I'm just kind of rolling with the punches. I start to go down. I start to fail, right? And when I fail in the game, all of a sudden life seems like I'm failing too. Like, so there was a clear correspondence to me between my success that I was having in progressing in this game due to the like principled based nature of its design. And likewise, when I was failing, my life felt like it was fucking falling apart. Right. And so I recognized that. I was like, there's something profound there, the fact that like we can almost synchronize our being with the success that our avatar is having in a game, right? Like, because we identify with it, right? We're strongly identified with it. And then we pull its success or its failures into our reality. And so I thought, man, that's a potent thing. Like, how can we use Ascension to empower people when they're empowered and empower them when they're disempowered, right?
Perfect.
Rather than having this kind of, oh, if you're doing good in the game, you're doing great, and if you're doing bad in the game, well, you're fucking failing, right? So that's something that we're managing again with the language and the response. As I said, you've got this kind of guide that guides you through, and he changes form. He will troll you when you need to be trolled. He will encourage you when you need to be encouraged, and that's kind of like one of the things that we want to have as an outcome of the game. We've got a big long list of kind of desired outcomes in terms of cognitive development. And we're hoping that all of that cognitive development that happens in the game obviously bleeds out into the user's reality, like upgrading their ability to perform as people as well. Like that is the core of this game. That is the absolute core. And it's going to be very much in the background. It's very much not in your face. The game's just going to play like a game. You're not going to have this guy trying to indoctrinate you throughout the process. It's all going to be very subtle and very nuanced. But it will be there, and the more you play it, the more you'll be exposed to these philosophies and these ideas. And fingers crossed, the result will be empowerment, both emotional, mental, and if you go out and take action, physical as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, you're getting me all excited here. And I just want to say that, like after watching a good movie, like a really good movie, you walk away just feeling great, right? And I think too, I once heard an argument against sort of like counterfeit achievement, and somebody threw gaming into that basket. But I think there can be a clean separation between like it comes down to this too, I think, is like, if you're focused, like, okay, I'm going to sit down, I want to do some gaming, I want to have some fun. There's games where you can switch your mind off and have fun, but there's games when it's like, this is no different from me going to the gym. I'm going to train another set of faculties within me, and it's going to be glorious. It's going to be, I know there's a big reward, there's a big payoff if I do this. And if there's not, regardless, I don't need success and failure. I'm just focused on plowing through and doing what it takes. But I think we've teased the audience enough here.
But yeah, and that will be a tool. That will definitely be a tool. This game will be a tool for people that have that mindset, but it will also deliver the same benefits to people that don't. That people just want to play the game. If they persist through it and repeat the content, enough to finish the game, then they'll get the same effects as the person, or close to the same effects as the person that actually went in seeking to upgrade their software.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Should we give them a treat?
Should we give them a treat? All right, let's give them a little sneak peek, shall we?
Okay, I'll take this down so you can take over the screen.
Now, sound is basically going to be pretty much muted, just FYI, because sound components are all kind of work in progress at the moment, but let us go.
That's all right. That's all right. The full cinematic experience will be drip fed out to them.
Yes, it will. Here we go. Share screen. Do this one. Can you see it? Is it showing up? I don't know.
Hang on. There we go. And cool. I'll full screen it. There we go. And I'll turn that pesky little banner off.
So again, talking about what I said regarding correspondence puzzles, this game is so brutal that you actually have to figure out the controls with a puzzle.
And you have to be able to read the font.
Yes, you do. Currently, the game's probably only going to be handled in one language, but if we have the success that we expect to, that will quickly change. Kind of hard.
This is actually streaming pretty smooth. If anyone's in the audience is seeing this, and just let us know how it's coming through. Just put a comment in to let us know if it's coming, like the streaming quality is half good. Oh, I love that. See how he jumped on that ladder there? That's cool.
Smooth sailing, friend.
So if anyone's watching, you'll be able to see as John moves through the environment, some of you will see familiar symbols, and everything essentially needs to be paid attention to. Some things are going to be useful and some things are ornamental, but still paying attention is what will help you get through this game, because the platforming and dodging traps, and we haven't talked about the combat, but we can do that in another live. But essentially, these things, once you overcome the physical difficulty, then it'll be the mental, sort of like the puzzle base, which will be the new challenge.
Now, there are spikes right there. If I stand up, I will die instantly. If you'd like me to die instantly, just let me know.
John, show us a glorious death, John.
All right,
let us move away from
friend.
Oh, you got that was a bit biblical, wasn't it?
Go this way. So essentially, what we're doing and this is a demo level. Essentially, it's a kind of speed running level with a whole load of ambient, like environmental traps. The game spawns 7 tablets every session, 7 of these emerald tablets, which basically act as keys to exiting the level. Every time you collect one, it will essentially give you a quick blurb of the associated hermetic principle.
Here we go, sword and shield. Woo-hoo.
So here we have a real basic correspondence puzzle. You won't have noticed, but on the way up, I jumped over 2 symbols. One was moon, and one was the moon, and one was Mercury. So they're basically the informing mechanics for the puzzle. So you got to stop it on the right symbol. Oh, I hit it on the wrong one because I'm a noob. Where is Mercury? I might have actually changed it. So we'll disregard that just for now, because I think I've changed it and I haven't updated it. But essentially what you'd do is you'd match those 2 symbols to the correspondent informing symbols, which are down here somewhere. Well, they should be. Yeah, there they are, Mercury and Moon, right? So by locking those things on Mercury and Moon, that would have triggered a door. Run down here. We'll try not to die. We'll do a little roll to dodge these dudes. Oh,
ooh,
I failed.
Well, that's not gonna wash out. I want to say too that how you interact with the switches and the things. Also, there's a couple options there too, without giving too much away. So there's a lot of nuance, even in like how you hit. Interact with puzzle mechanics in the game. A soft hit versus a heavy hit, so to speak. Oh my gosh, was that a hidden thing?
Yeah, so that's a disappearing platform. Ooh. Obviously, I know where all of them are by now.
Yeah. And then for those who are struggling, there will be the odd ladder there. John is he's a merciful master.
Well, taking a lot of inspiration from Dark Souls, there are a lot of different ways to complete the level. There is never going to be just one way through. There will be multiple ways through, and that's because there is a crafting system that will actually give you options to change the way that you traverse the level. Again, its replayability becomes like a speedrunning game with time pressure. So the more you kind of learn the level, the more you understand what features are kind of around. I should have really updated these switches, but they're probably not working at the moment.
So I just want to say that there is down the bottom of the screen left here, we have a countdown timer as well to indicate that there is, the pressure's on, guys.
So each session, you'll have a certain amount of time. You'll be given a certain amount of tasks. You can basically add and take away from that time by picking up certain pearls. As you can see, like there's kind of like risk versus reward mechanics built into all of the environmental traps. Like if I don't play it properly, it'll kill me instantly. Detracting from time, and there'll be a time penalty for that as well. Or if I play it right, I can use it to my advantage and get a little bit of an extra jump off it. So risk versus reward, route planning, timing, rhythm, all very, very important in the game. Timing especially. Oh, there's a spike right there. Look, if I move to there, I'm definitely dead.
Yeah, so you got to keep your wits about you, peeps.
Keep your wits about you for certain.
And I love the mantling, bro. Like, it's so smooth, you guys have done really well to make this character, like learning about how animation works and things like that has been a real treat for me because I can see all the potential in it. And but this character here is so cool. Buff Spartan warrior dude. Makes me want to go to the gym and get jacked. I'm going to go and do 10 press ups right now.
Well, that's good. Get it done. So now let's see if I can do this. This is a leap of faith required.
Dun, 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 leap of faith. Reminds me of that Indiana Jones in the Last Crusade movie when he has to walk across the abyss.
Jump pad.
Jump pad. Whiz. Love it.
Doot. Oh. Doot. Yes, and now we can drop it down. There is no fall damage.
At this point? Or
At this point. And this is the aspect of the area that is still being built.
Okay.
So a little look around.
Those glorious statues. Awesome.
Hail thought. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So that's one of the levels that we're working on. There's quite a few that have already kind of been started. They're all underway. The game is about, for the first episode.
I'm still on the live stream, Pop.
Oh, sorry. I'll stop sharing. So the game, the first release of the game is going to be about $10 to $15 New Zealand. And there'll be about 10 hours content. We wanted, because we're a small studio and kind of self-funded, this is pretty much the only way for us to do it. The initial dream and vision was obviously far more grandiose, but the reality is I would have bankrupted myself really quickly had I tried to execute what is to be a future more scalable version of the game. This version is basically hitting a very specific market of like elite gamers that want to become even more elite. So speedrunners, people that have that play games that have high skill caps, that are demanding, that kind of espouse the idea that by playing this game, you will actually sharpen your gaming senses. So there'll be probably about 10 hours content in the first game for anywhere between $10 and $15, but that will be replayable. So it'll be like 10 hours the first time you play it. but it's designed to be replayable. There will be co-op elements, so you will be able to race against friends and challenge your friends in the game to escaping essentially the dungeon, or fighting through or transcending the dungeons. So there'll be like short multiplayer sprints, there'll be short co-op levels, and there'll be a few of the main levels, which again, to introduce you to the core features of the game's future episodes that will come. And leading into, as the guest said, a game that's a little bit more open world and Skyrim-esque. But that's definitely the second version of the game, which is planned to probably start or be finished rather development, because the games are being developed concurrently. Probably 2.5 years away from that one, and about 7 or 8 months away from the first release of Ascension. So it's pretty exciting. We're starting a Kickstarter on my 40th birthday on the 18th of December to try and get the first episode of the game over the line. I've probably sank maybe anywhere between two and 300 grand into it of my own cash over the last year and a half of development, and a year of kind of pre-production before that as well. And we're going to try and raise 75,000 New Zealand dollars to complete the first game. And the outlook is pretty positive, as I said, with a few major bits of market validation, like with Chained Together and a few appearances, particular people with large audiences appearing on Joe Rogan that are interested in this type of product. So that's exciting. So for me, it's just like, I just have to keep grinding, like there's been a lot of challenges along the way. There's been a lot of nights where I've woken up and been like, oh my God, what have I committed to? I guess like any war worth fighting is going to kind of throw you through those kind of emotional gauntlets. So I'm ready and I'm willing, and I am able, I believe. So yeah, watch this space.
Well, thank you, man. Well, thank you so much. This has been so much fun to just hang out. And now, obviously, we want to plug all of the ways that people can find, follow, and support just VFS and the vision and everything in general. Obviously, there's a focus on the initial game and the Kickstarter launching next month. But obviously, you can go to the website. There's a contact page there.
Yeah, all those, pretty much all the links up at the top there, those golden circles will take you to all of our socials. The more, if you can like and comment on any of them, that's obviously going to be a massive help. Most of my friends are pretty funny. Like I see friends out and about, and they'll be like, oh man, I love that thing that you put up online yesterday. I'd be like, bro, could you please comment and like it? Like, that's how it works now. If you want to be supportive, like, could you, so yeah, like, just like them, comment. Even if you're trolling me, it doesn't matter. Even if you say that looks shit or do it, it doesn't matter. Just like, please put something.
Share.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you say, as long as you're saying something, really. Other than the words that the algorithm doesn't like.
Oh, sorry. Before we forget, I just want to point out that you're running a devlog on the website here. Now, why is a devlog valuable and important for people to be aware of?
Well, that's up for the people to decide. But one thing that I would posit is that it shows progress, it shows intention. Also, you might even find some sneaky little hints and tricks and cheats in there. Because what we've essentially done for that devlog is we're pulling the data logs or the push logs from our repository. So every time we add changes to the project, we notarize what those changes are. So if problems arise in the future, we can pin them down. So we're basically pulling all of our GitHub pushes, which is the repository where the project's stored online, and we're updating it every week with all of the updates that are in the game. So you can pretty much see how much progress we're making from week to week, how much work's being done, what work's being done, what bugs are being fixed, yada yada yada. So it gives you insight, I guess, into our competencies and lack thereof if you've got a real keen eye. It's informative. It shows process and progress, and there are cheats in there that are actually, I believe, they've been highlighted in purple.
Okay.
So there are some little informative notes in there.
I think too that what it does is it creates confidence as well in people who are potential investors to go, wow, okay, we can see. I mean, it's great to see your gallery full of all your stuff, but here's another angle to show that, we're on task, we're on mission here, and we're documenting it. And obviously, there is that one of my favorite things about what VFS is offering is this Discord server. Now, a lot of people might not be even on Discord. I seriously, you want to check out Discord, guys, for whether you want to chat with your friends, your family. It offers a lot of options. But the Discord, John's there a bit with the other devs and the guest devs, talking, sharing, and educating people. And it's a really cool place to hang out. And so I think we've talked about maybe setting up some Discord events to advertise to people during the Kickstarter, especially, so you can come and congregate, hang out, and chat one-to-one, and be part of the, enjoy what happens and these types of things.
Yeah, we're also going to be actively looking for people to provide feedback and playtest as well. We're probably I think we're going to have a playable demo ready by about 15th of October. Somewhere around there, playable demo. So we're going to want to kind of have a group of alpha testers kind of on standby, ready to go. So if you do jump into the Discord and leave a message in there, we will get in contact with you if we're not already there, and invite you to any one of the tutorials or workshops that we run, which I do quite regularly in collaboration with other studios. And also invitations to play testing and just giving us ideas and feedback on the ideas. And hey, what about this? We definitely want as many people as the process as possible, because it's being made for the people. There's obviously some aspects of the core aspects of the game that can't really be retail it or change too much, but there's still plenty of space for player contribution and community contribution. Sorry, I can't hear you now, brother. I'm not sure what. Oh, there we go.
Yep. So I just want to point out to everyone that there's regular posts on Facebook and X, but there's a lot of goodies on the TikTok too. And so you can go check out TikTok for lots of little gameplay snippets, and there's a bit of music in that action too. The YouTube's great, and we're going to try and get John to do a bit of a live stream from time to time if we can, talk him into that. And so there's heaps of stuff, and you got no real excuse. You got to go check this stuff out. You want to hook this fella up. This stuff is just looking cooler and cooler, and we'll definitely want to catch up just prior to the Kickstarter. So we'll definitely organize another podcast, another live here on the Phil Rice YouTube about this time next month prior to the Kickstarter, on and around it, just to help remind peeps and just give a bit more insight, because obviously there'll be upgrades to the game. And some great feedback from the live chat. Thank you, everybody who's joined in. Really appreciate the support and your eyes. Please like, share, and subscribe and all that good stuff. And really appreciate Violet Flame Studios. Thank you so much for sponsoring the live streaming software. I'm able to get all these cool graphics and do all these extra fun things to make the live experience really fun and interactive, which is what we're trying to do here. Some of these exposing people to esoteric teachings can come across a bit sterile and bland. We're trying to re-pretty it up a little bit here and make it a bit more engaging, just to get people over the line as well. There's goodness in the texts, and there's also the way that the texts are presented too. And I think if Thoth was alive right now, he would have no hesitation in using the current available mediums to spread the knowledge and the wisdom. And this is what we're doing. So I want to say thank you to everyone. I want to say thank you to John and his wonderful support team of his wonderful lady and his wonderful family. And thank you for the kindness and generosity, because I'm a little bit part of this team as well, and so they're wonderful people. Please support this project.
You're
John.
very much a part of the team, bro. And yeah, I couldn't have come as far as I have without your encouragement and your kind words and your ideas and your dedication. And you showed up at the perfect time. Again, like, ask and you shall receive. You know, you literally showed up exactly when I needed you, and you were always just around the corner, which is so funny. You know,
it is funny that we literally live like just over the hill from each other. And thank you, brother. It's very kind. Now, I want to give you the final words here, John, to the audience. Is there anything you'd like to share from your depth of knowledge and wisdom?
Just focus on what you want and don't give any attention to that which you don't. That's probably how I've managed to achieve what I've managed to achieve, is just absolute dedication and unwavering persistence towards the goal. And where possible, remove from your life all of the practices that clearly slow down the actualization of that goal, and integrate as many processes that you believe will speed it up. That's probably the best thing that I can say in terms of anything. And learn to sell, because if you can't sell yourself, it doesn't matter how skilled you are, nobody's ever going to know.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, everyone, we're going to call it a day here. We hopefully you've enjoyed all the content here and all the goodies that John's been just put out for us there. Please check out the website, violetflamestudios.co.nz. Thank you to everyone for checking out the Phil Rice YouTube channel. We will be in touch very soon. Know that more streams coming your way. And yeah, check out the description for how you can support the channel and Violet Flame Studios. Stay well, have a beautiful day, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.